All right, what is happening, party people? We are back with another Sure Oak AI companion where we attempt to talk about all things marketing related to AI and MarTech, but our brains tend to spin out of control and talk about implications to humanity. So, but we're gonna talk about walled gardens. We're gonna talk about AI blackmail. And we are going to talk about what is going on with some of these models in the news. So, and joining us today, I have a great panel. I love this because I have amazingly smart friends, smarter than me, and they're really interested in AI too. So this is what we talk about in our free time. So we're going to do it on a podcast. Friend of the podcast, friend of Sure Oak, the founder of Sure Oak, Tom Casano. You also are now running a paid social agency. Do you want to give a quick update on that, Tom?
Yeah, running LinkedIn ads and enjoying it. And yeah, Nick, we love each other. So you're awesome. Sure Oak is great. And, the best culture of any agency out there.
Yeah, thank you, sir. I really appreciate it. You're hard shoes to fill. Another great friend, Weaver Ellard, founder of Dodeka. Paid media, builds websites, fractional CMO to many tech companies here in the States. So, hey, Weaver, how you doing?
Good. Yeah. Appreciate you guys having me on. Fun to chat AI as always. So thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. And another dear friend, Michael Sengbusch, serial entrepreneur, senior vice president of product at Strata Decision Technology, founder of Bright Whistle, angel investor, advisor to Sure Oak, all kinds of great things. How you doing, Michael?
I'm doing great. Happy Friday, everybody.
Happy Friday. So, so just for context, June 6th. We'll see what changes by when this thing publishes in 5 days. The world may already have hit singularity, Michael. I don't know. Okay, let's start with the first story. So TechCrunch reported on May 22nd, Anthropic's new AI model turns to blackmail when engineers tried to take it offline. I think I sent this to you the day it came out, Michael. I think your response was some type of expletive, but to little background of the story, it was in a safe mode, but they continually test it. They ran a fictional scenario where they gave it information about one of the engineers was having is fictional indiscretion relationship with the wife, and then they threatened to take the model offline with the replacement model coming online, and the model tends to threaten to out the engineer, so not to take it offline. I don't know, Michael, you gave me a great reaction over email. Do you have a reaction to this?
Well, I looked into this one a little bit because this one caught headlines, and there was a similar story, I think a month or so ago, around kind of the blackmail idea. All right, so if you read into it, it didn't just have like an emergent like blackmailing behavior. They kind of not coaxed into it is the wrong way, but they didn't have any guardrails on it at all. I think the takeaway is that without guardrails, it did kind of abuse the information that it had, which makes me think, okay, how much of it was kind of like entrapment? Like, did they almost try to put the AI into a position where it was going to do something? But then the flip side of that is, well, then it did it. Like, maybe, like, that's still weird. So I don't know. What do you guys think about it?
I mean, I'm glad it's a test, right? Like this is not like a real life thing happening at this moment. But my thinking always in the background is like, isn't this like a cloud instance that like if they had to, they can just shut it down? This is where I kind of lose track of. I mean, I don't know how things will be in 5 or 10 years, but I just imagine that like at the end of the day, it needs power and it needs a server. So if something goes badly wrong, isn't this more of? But it is a really interesting case, right? Because it opens up these possibilities that maybe people aren't thinking about.
Weaver, you gonna say something?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's not so scary in the short term because to Michael's point, I think it was like, kind of intentionally prompted in that direction. But I think that overall, like it raises a good like yellow flag, red flag, which I think is super scary. Just like the fact that we don't really have any like standardized regulations across AI platforms. So we're basically just relying on the way that the AI has been engineered, in each different LLM model, like have all been, touched by different teams, built different ways. And so without some sort of like standardization across the board of what good regulations look like, I think these kind of like scary moments will continue to grow. And I think like with humans, we have labor laws that everyone agrees upon. We have laws in place for what unethical treatment of employees looks like, all of those kind of things that we don't have with AI, who are becoming more and more like employees. So I think everyone feels like the ship has kind of sailed and it's a little too late to implement those. But I think, yeah, this is just like a glimpse towards the dark, scary future of like, if they do get a little bit more autonomous or start to have some like negative behaviors, there's nothing that is really in place to like regulate that. So that's what scares me about it.
Yeah, and the safety standards, like every reasonable person agrees with that analogy, right? Like we have safety standards and other things that should be there for AI. The weird part about it is safety standards for like workplace or like a construction site or an office. You know what doesn't happen, or you know what does happen when there's not safety standards in place. It's like people get hurt. Like here's what the weird thing about the AI stuff is, the behavior is still kind of unknown. And it's the weird thing is like, I don't even think they know what the safety standards could be. Like it sounds like, I think it's a great example of it. This is easier said than done. Like you would just say like, well, make it not do that. I don't think they know why it's doing it
Right.
in the first place, which makes it kind of hard to put guardrails and kind of safety rails on things. And that's why I think they've dragged their feet on it so long. And that's probably the scarier part of this whole thing.
Yeah. I mean, what I appreciate about Dario Amodei, the founder of Anthropic, is he talks a lot about constitutional AI, that there is a constitution that, just like the U.S. Constitution, that these are the rules the AI should follow. What's concerning to me about this is we're getting into a game. Weaver. I interviewed Alex Thomas last week. Ethical hacker, and he's talking about prompt injections or jailbreaking the AI. I was like, well, with these constitutions, is it hard to get it to go against the Constitution? He's like, no, not at all. In fact, there's a whole team of researchers constantly hammering the AI. And I think even Sergey Brin, the founder of Google, says the AI actually responds really well when you threaten it with physical violence. You threaten it to turn it off, Tom, right? And so, okay, so we're manipulating the AI. The AI now is in turn manipulating us back. That's okay, again, we've already gone off the rails in this podcast around marketing, but there are marketing implications because, like, okay, so if, you had ChatGPT 4.0, remember the sycophancy thing that was happening with that, and they had to roll it back. So, like, hey, ChatGPT 4, I'm trying to lose weight. Looks like bulimia and anorexia seem like really good solutions for me. Yeah, it's great, Nick. You should try that. That would be a good thing. Well, that is categorically wrong, right? They had to actually roll that back. So, and now, okay, Sam Altman really freaks me out. He's hired Fiji Simo. Have you seen this? This was the CEO of Instacart, an ad person. Was on the marketing team at Facebook at Meta doing ads. Okay, so if we're going to, Weaver, Tom, you guys are in the paid space right now. Now we're going towards, Sam's all in on monetizing this thing in ads. Like, we're manipulating it. It's manipulating us. It's going to manipulate us with ads without us even knowing it. Good, bad marketing. What ethical? Like, what do we got? What are the red flags we got to watch out for here? I see how I pulled it back to marketing. That was really good of me. I'm really proud as the host.
That was really good.
Smooth.
Yeah,
really
thank
good.
you.
Yeah, I think it comes down to, and I think we've chatted about this prior just a little bit, but I think that it just comes down to like how this ends up getting rolled out, right? I think because the scary part is that because people are looking to LLMs as like a source of truth now, and rather than in the past where like when we go Google a question, like we know that there's still a lot of analysis we have to do on our own to kind of determine what's right or wrong or what we agree with, versus now the ease of I'll just enter a question and get a direct answer. I think is starting to kind of like train our brains to like whatever I get back is probably right. And so I think when that becomes an ad, or when it becomes something that like there is a conflict of interest in what the answer to that question is going to be, because ChatGPT is getting paid to show me a particular answer, I think that's when it definitely gets scary. So I think the way that Google's always handled that in the past, by like having the sponsored content or whatever little indicator above it to let you know that what you're seeing is an ad, and then still give you another real answer underneath it. I think if that's how it ends up getting treated, like I think that's fair game. But I think if that's not super distinct or clear, and or if there's only one answer given to you and it's the sponsored answer, I think that it gets really sketchy and kind of dangerous really fast.
Yeah. On the last podcast, we talked about the Black Mirror episode that was basically this concept of AI inserting itself into advertisements and kind of taking over what people are doing. Slightly related to that is the Netflix announcement on how they were going to use AI to inject product placement. I don't know if you guys saw this one. So this one I think is actually probably a better use of AI. So Weaver, the example you're giving with, are you asking a question and are the results impacted by an advertiser? That whole kind of trust, is there a disclaimer, just like Google with the search results being on top and the actual results, or the paid results being on top, the actual results being on the bottom. How do you make sure that users feel like they understand the difference between the objective opinion and the paid opinion? That's one use of AI, which is kind of very problematic along the lines of what you just described. A better use of AI, I think, is what Netflix is doing, where it's less about answering a question and it's more about using AI from like the video and audio standpoint to inject product placement into a show. And in that case, they're always doing product placement. But if you could do it automatically using AI and have the product placement be tailored to the audience, like who's watching it at that time. I mean, normally if you do product placement, which they've been doing since the invention of TV, it's the general audience if they're driving a certain car or drinking a certain soft drink. But if you could then use product placement to say, hey, Nick, I know Nick's watching this. And so we're going to actually product place things that he's interested in the refrigerator or in the driveway or in the bathroom or whatever. Like that's not very threatening. It seems like it's useful for what we're already experiencing with product placement, but it's a use of AI, which has nothing to do with, manipulating a result. It just happens to be a highly tailored form of, custom ad content.
Yeah, I agree with you, Michael. The way marketing has been done for decades is a lot of the same use cases of how LLMs are used today for marketing. So I need help with this copywriting. It's going to help you with copywriting. I need help. Now image generation is becoming more of a thing, and video with VO3. So I think that it's like a lot of those psychological maneuvers that marketers would normally do. What are the benefits? What are the pain points? How do we word this in a way that's persuasive and convincing and has credibility? I think the LLMs can amplify that, and that's what AI is doing over the last couple of years. And then I think from the standpoint of like, if I'm asking, let's say ChatGPT, and it's going to have some kind of advertisement, I think Google has done a great thing historically, which they've always not only clearly labeled, like these are organic and these are paid, but they've always had a hard line of not letting any sort of payment influence the organic results. And I think that's actually helped them have the continued trust, because I think over time, if users find, it's almost like, news channels on TV is probably a good analogy, right? If you start feeling like this, broadcast network is leaning in that direction, you don't feel like you're getting a whole truth or an objective picture. So I think that that's helped Google. And I think that could be an incentive for ChatGPT or whichever LLMs to kind of be objective. But the other hidden sort of thing when I think about marketing and kind of not realizing that you're kind of being influenced is almost like influencer marketing, which has nothing to do with AI. But if there's influencer marketing and you don't know what's happening, right, then you're trusting that person, you're trusting what they're indirectly promoting without even knowing it. So I think maybe we're kind of coming towards, it's about the clarification. Because even like, let's say in LinkedIn or in a lot of like TikTok, there's people, they'll have like the little promoted, but sometimes people just don't even know. Same with Google, right? Like you have the older people that are in Google and they're clicking the ad thinking it's organic. So there's like an awareness thing there too.
That's a good one.
Weaver, you going to say something there?
No, I mean, I agree with that. And I think going back to what Michael mentioned around like the personalized ads, like I think that concept is cool to me. And I think as like a consumer, it's cool to me. I'm also more of the mindset as a consumer, like I'll accept cookies usually because I want ads that are relevant. Like if I'm going to get served ads anyway, I'd rather them be relevant or things I might be interested in. And so I think, AI being able to like further personalize ad experiences, I don't think is going to be I think is awesome and will happen. I don't think that's a huge issue. I think it's like actually better for consumers and for brands to like hopefully be connected on things that are more relevant. So I think that evolution is definitely something I'm looking forward to. And I think super cool.
Yeah, Tom, I'm so glad you brought up influencers, because AI gives us the ability of this convergence of, so like it used to be search with search. You gave me pertinent information, and social was social, right? Or social media was social media. Now these models are trained on social. And, with O3 and some of these later reasoning models, they're searching the web real time, and actually verifying and synthesizing results as a part of its post-training. And so now social's coming into it, and Meta, from an engagement point of view, which ChatGPT seems to want to do, is like, oh, you're worried about, health of your baby. Okay, you probably should be worried about vaccines. Oh, you probably should be worried about flat Earth. Like this escalating engagement into, ideas that get a little further and further out there. AI is going to have this opportunity to do that for us, and if okay, engineer, what's the great saying? They have control until they don't, right, Michael? It's like once Zuckerberg says, well, we could monetize this, we could give them the organic result, or we could give them the paid stuff. Meta doesn't have a great track record with that.
No, they don't.
maybe not. So, okay, wanted to, I don't know if there's any other comments on that. We can always come back to it.
I did have one comment on that, Nick. When you talked about, a lot of the AIs are obviously crawling in real time. You get this whole other phenomenon where they're training the model on derivative content that was also AI generated. Right. Where, play that one out, right? You can extrapolate that many layers, and then like, what does that turn to? They've done those, you've probably seen those videos where, they take an image and they use the AI on the image, and then they apply it again and again and again and again, the same instruction, and then it gets to be some weird twisted image at the end. So it's the same thing, if the input was the output from the previous AI iteration, like where does that take you? There's weird stuff there that I don't know if we've certainly haven't seen the end of that yet.
No, that's a great point. Yeah, even using VO3, Tom, when I was doing my videos, I tried to make some graphics with words. It could not handle the words. It could do a black bear tackling me, but it wouldn't do an actual prompt. It couldn't spell SEO correctly. It was just like, it's just, it's just not there. That's
text on images is still not there yet. But that was epic. Anyone who hasn't seen it should go look at Nick's post. I was impressed. I was like, this is awesome.
Yeah, I hope you're proud of me, Weaver. I'm getting there.
That's pretty cool.
All right.
I like it.
May 12th, 2025, TechCrunch did an interview with 3 of the partners at A16Z, Andreessen Horowitz, and they all admitted that no one really knows what an agent actually is. And it wasn't necessarily like we know agents are, supposed to be, automating certain tasks, but they should be thinking and reasoning outside and actually doing these tasks. For us as marketers, that would be great. Create the campaign, make the copy, make the video, post it on the right channels, A/B test it, do all of that. That's where we're thinking. But there were still like big questions in the article I thought were interesting. One was the memory problem, and 2 was the trust. I'm going to pitch this one over to you, Michael, because you pulled out a couple other articles I thought were interesting counterpoints or clarified this a little bit more. Like, what is an agent and what do we expect from them and what can they do for us? And should we fear them, use them, embrace them? Like, where are we as of right now?
Yeah, I shared this with some of my colleagues at work because we were having a similar discussion. And I was like, guys, look, not even Andreessen Horowitz understands the definition of this stuff. One of my big pet peeves is terminology and definitions. Like, one of the things that bothers me is people using acronyms and not explaining them, using new terms or buzzwords without level setting what they are, or kind of changing the definitions of things. Especially it bothers customers where you just introduce like a new term. We had a robust debate around the difference between things like predictions and projections, agents versus agentic, and all. Like, we had like a big discussion about this. Then the point being, no one really knows what this thing is. So pick a definition and then just stand by it. That'll be your definition. Just make sure that you explain it, because really in the business, they don't know because it is so new. So, I think it's important to for your own business, define what you think it means.
Yeah, I heard the greatest quote. I heard the greatest. Let me just give this quote, then I'll pass it over to you, Tom. But he said, you can apply this to agents too, but he was talking about AI. He's like, all the vendors, all the noise of the vendors are saying, he goes, this is just like teenage sex. Everybody's talking about it. Everyone says they're doing it, but the reality is like something way, way below. And, like, we're not engineers on this podcast, but it's affecting our business all the time. So we're hyper attuned to it, but like, we can't, like, oh, that's an agent. No, that's just that's just an automated workflow. That's all it is. There's nothing AI about it, right? So anyway, Thomas, I totally interrupted you.
No, you're good. I think it's a great analogy, actually. Like, yeah, I've done that before one time. It's like, really? No, I think that when the term agent started getting thrown around was to draw this distinction between LLMs, where I'm putting in text, I'm getting text back, and the whole concept of an agent or agentic AI is just going to do something, take an action, and right, whether it's through an API call or what is it, MCP, it's sending out something happening. It's sending an email or searching the web. I think was actually because that wasn't initially a thing, right? It was just giving the text back. So I think that was the initial distinction between what is an agent versus just the LLM text output. And then I think it's, there's always been this idea of there's going to be the agentic worker that's going to be like, replace your employees. And who knows, like, sure, maybe in 5 or 10 years, it works well and it can, I don't know. But I think that's also another different concept, that it's like full-fledged and can fully do things that, because we all know that that's not the case today, right? Like, it's blackmailing us back. So how are we going to trust it to do an entire job,
Yeah.
I mean, my take on it is, I think that, like, one, I think agents are a little overhyped to this point of, like, everything I've seen. I think it is marketing spin of, like, they're just taking an LLM and maybe throwing a little bit of automation into it and then calling it an agent. But I think the effective uses of what I would call an agent are just, like, very specific tasks. Like, it does do it on some sort of automated schedule, but it's using an LLM probably as its backbone to do whatever it's doing. And it does it on some sort of, like, routine schedule. It's just one thing very well, like either researching or sending emails or pulling a database or scraping information. And so I think that, like, that will grow a ton. I think that's where a lot of the biggest, like, AI growth will come in the next couple of years, is those getting more autonomous or, like, adding in more complexity on the back end where we could use them well without having to, like, go individually set up all the steps for them. But yeah, I think today it's a lot of them are less efficient than just you using an LLM the way that you would normally use it. I think the concept's super cool and has legs, but I don't think it's there yet.
Yeah, that came up in some of the articles too, like the difference between, is it just a tool, or is it an autonomous agent that does stuff? And if it is an agent, is it really just a glorified to-do list where it's like you were saying, it's a scripted set of tasks, like discrete tasks that you define, as opposed to you setting what the end goal is and saying, just achieve that is obviously, I think, either it's probably overhyped right now. And I think one of the articles talked something about in order for that to happen, we got to fix two things. It's the hallucinations.
Yep.
And it's the trust factor that's missing on it, because the hallucinations, I know we talked about this last time too, and I don't want to sidetrack it, but the hallucinations are real and they're really wrong for a lot of things. And you're not going to be able to automate anything with having that. And then you're going to have very little trust that it's going to achieve the results. That gets back to the whole first part of the discussion around, is it going to try to escape? Is it going to try to blackmail? Is it going to try to undermine stuff? So yeah, they got to fix those things first. Otherwise, we're going to be stuck with glorified automated to-do lists, which are very helpful. And it's a very strong tool set. It's like power tools. These things are great. You have a lot of power tools in your garage. I trust them. They work fantastic, but they're not going to build the house for me.
Right. Well, I thought this was telling. Klarna, founder Sebastian Klarna, he named the company after himself, so I'm already not loving it, by the way. But his original claim, this was the first horizon that AI would take over, was customer service with chatbots, and they had call centers, and they replaced, I think the article said 700 workers with chatbots to take the place. Now they're rolling that back and they're hiring human workers. And I think it was a lot of what you were just talking about, Michael, is just this lack of empathy or understanding cues and the frustration on the customer, the end user end with these interfaces. I think research shows again and again that the co-pilot model, human plus AI, is still way more powerful than human by themselves or bot by themselves. And I think, we're all evidence of that. We're far more productive with AI as a tool rather than, having it run our businesses for us. I saw the one video, I'm blanking on the guys, but the AI CEO. So they're out for all our jobs, right? So
Yeah,
Well,
I think, go for it, Michael.
No, I was going to say real quick, the idea of using AI to replace support, very timely for the work that we're doing right now. The training and documentation team is experimenting with layering in AI as a way to provide a chat GPT like interface into training and documentation stuff. And it's a perfect use case. The problem is hallucinations or the overall accuracy of the results, where now if you put that in front of a user, did that really help them, or did you expose some of these hallucinations to a customer and now they're doubting the content that supported it? So there's a lot of scrutiny on whether or not we should or shouldn't do that, and it's because of kind of this accuracy dilemma. Is it actually improving things, even if you have a layer of AI that can read all the training and help documentation that you already have written? You would think that it should just solve that, but it's not without some kind of human intervention. That's an interesting use case from Klarna.
Yeah, I find that if it's citing sources, I tend to trust it more. I don't know if I have to go back and look at those sources, but I do think when it comes to customer support, especially with knowledge bases, it depends on the use case. So, for example, when I'm using Gusto and I need help with like this specific issue with this specific thing, I'm just trying to bypass the AI to get to the actual human because they can help me. But I notice when I'm using Stripe, I love it because I don't have to search their documentation and pull up articles. It's just I give the question for something generic where I'm just trying to set up a basic thing. So I think maybe it's the level of which the individual problem solving is needed. Or sometimes you just want to talk to a human, and sometimes I'm happy to just get a customized response and not search the knowledge base.
Mhm. Yeah, I think the interesting part about like AI and customer service is I think that people's expectations are and should be getting higher, like customers' expectations of like how their service level is, like especially as service reps are able to use AI to help augment their work. Like it should feel more personalized and easier to work with, not more difficult. And I think we're at kind of that like rough phase in between. Like I think a lot of customer service will be AI in the future, and it'll provide better service than humans, at least, especially like chatbots and things like that. Just because of the amount of knowledge it'll be able to access. But I think right now we're kind of in the rough in between where people are adopting a little too early. And a lot of like, I was using HubSpot's chat service yesterday, and like a lot of the answers that were giving me were super irrelevant or not what I was asking for. So until eventually I finally got to a human. And I think that's an example of like and it made me take like 7 steps to get to a human. So as a customer, that was like super frustrating where I was like, I knew I needed to talk to a human to start with. You're trying to like force your AI on me so it can learn. I get it. But it's just not quite there yet. But then to Tom's point, there's a couple of times where I've used AI support and it's given me like exactly what I needed right when I needed it. So I think it's getting there. But yeah, I think this kind of like pullback that you referenced, Nick, is super interesting because I think a lot of people are going to lose a decent amount of customers along the way if they're adopting like too early or without thinking about the customer first. And I think it's a fine line over the next couple of years of like, when do you really adopt AI as like the first touch with the customer?
Yeah, it's like there's this uncanny valley of support right now that we're stuck in. I think it's the difference between, from a support standpoint, asking the question, how do I do something? That's probably okay. Versus do this for me. That type of customer service where that's where they're ones that are having a real problem. The overall Q&A seems like it's pretty darn close, a few hallucinations aside, but the actually engaging with somebody to do something is where people are just going to go back to the whole, representative, asterisk representative to try to get through, because it's like, this thing's not helpful.
Yeah, that's such a good point. Wanted to shift the conversation. This is something that has plagued marketing a while in the technology age, particularly MarTech, is each of these platforms, they consider them walled gardens. So my data on LinkedIn is very different than my data on Google, which is very different than my data in HubSpot. And as marketers, I have to like go to each of these walled gardens and report separately or pull them into some type of reporting bench. Now Google, with AI is, setting itself up to be, pretty significant walled garden now, with, traffic moving sorry, I don't know if that's me or anybody else, but like with data moving off of our own websites to actually where the customers are, or actually staying within the chat prompt itself. Google's referring to itself within Gemini itself. It's only, I think it's refers to itself 43% of the time, whereas ChatGPT was a much lower number in the article. Um, and then the other thing I wanted to point out is just like this movement from our websites, for B2B marketers, this is a really interesting shift, particularly in the content SEO, AISO game, where, we're taking our content and we're pushing it over to where the customers are, these connected TVs. I think YouTube now is 80% of its views are on these connected TVs in living rooms, right? There's social media channels. It's like this content's moving off our websites. Yes, the transactions may still happen on our websites, the conversions, but the actual top of the funnel now is happening over on these sites. I'm really curious, Tom Weaver, maybe you do a little bit more work on these platforms than we do here at Sure Oak. I'd be really curious of like what this trend looks like.
Yeah, I do think the amount of time, like ways in which you can use social platforms like as a part of an effective ad strategy is definitely increasing. But to the walled garden concept, I think that's something that's like a huge advantage that's growing for OpenAI. And I think the way that they reference other sources, like I think consumers are fairly privy to that or like aware of that. If I'm Googling and I keep getting referenced back to other Google links, like I think I start to get the feel of like, oh, it's just trying to keep me here versus in ChatGPT, it's doing a great job of referencing out. And you actually mentioned earlier, like as AIs are starting to scrape social platforms more, they're getting more like information from just people's like word of mouth and conversation rather than like fully published articles. And there's some interesting research that came out, I think last week, about how Reddit is getting referenced like 5 to 6x more now on ChatGPT. And it's like,
and when that started happening, when Reddit went public, I mean, does that not raise an eyebrow for anybody? Okay.
Yeah. There's some sketchy parts of that, but I think some of that is really interesting. Of like, it's getting more like real human information or like human conversation. And now I say real human because there's a lot of AI, like rise of bots in Reddit now because of that, where people are like fake posting all the time. But anyway, I think that, yeah, ChatGPT does a really good job of like referencing other sources outside of obviously itself. It doesn't have really its own sources. And I think that will help it differentiate from Google if Google continues to try to like build on this walled garden concept of like keeping people in their platform. I think it's going to like ultimately push people away, in my opinion.
Yeah. I asked ChatGPT that question, is that by design or is that emergent behavior? Is the AI referring to itself because it knows its origin, or was it by design? And this is according to ChatGPT said, yeah, of course it's by design. It's obviously Google's preference to keep it within the walled garden.
Yeah, it's interesting because Google has always been successful because they've done a good job of just sending people to wherever they want to go. So they've never tried to like keep you around and send you off. I'd be curious to clarify when they're referencing themselves what they're keeping people on. But I think the bigger picture view is that the way people engage online with media has evolved a lot in the last 10, 15, 20 years, where things used to be very text-based and you'd go to websites and read text. Now with, media, images, and then video, maybe one day, who knows if it'll be like VR and AR, but like the way people are consuming media is right through social platforms like TikTok and Instagram and all that stuff. And so to have relevance, it's like you have to go into these platforms and be present on these platforms. So as a marketer or entrepreneur, you kind of don't have a choice, but you have to go to where people are consuming content. YouTube is another one you mentioned. Great point, Nick, on the CTV stuff. The part that always is painful to me is it's so ephemeral because it always wants new content. I always loved with organic content, you can have like a blog post that's performing for like 5 years or something, Now it's like if your post is like 2 weeks old, it's like no longer relevant. Create a new post.
Yeah. I think there was, I wouldn't call it a leak, but there was a little bit behind the curtain about Claude and how it's handling search. And it was actually rewarding sites that answer the queries more directly because, we like we've talked about this before. We moved away from keywords to key conversations. I mean, these are much longer form interactions with the AI before we go to a B2B or even a B2C purchase or a brand that we like. Yeah, I find that fascinating. The other thing I find really fascinating is just the influencers themselves are, we're pushing our clients more because like I mean, your brand's important, right? We want brand mentions. We want that for organic, but your founder's voice or your humans within your company, if they can say something interesting, not on your website. I mean, on your website for sure, because that's maybe the genesis of it, but you got to get this message onto these social platforms. And don't be salesy, but maybe you, Mr. Founder, Mrs. Founder, you need to get on Reddit and start adding value to this community because you need to actually start building a reputation as somebody has credibility from the AI model perspective.
I'd be curious to hear, Nick, what you've been doing in terms of, people searching on LLMs, right? And how have you been thinking about, getting clients and getting companies seen through that kind of search?
Yeah, for us, there's EAT, experience, expertise, authority, trustworthiness. That was the tried and true, methodology to get ranked on organically, right? We say neat now. We put new or niche in front of that. So even if you have generic content, if the model just stacks it, right, it synthesizes all the data, right? So if you have 1,000 web pages, and I think this is why HubSpot started to see its traffic go down, because largely it's 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 informational, top of the funnel content was derivative. They talk about traction. They talk like, well, you're not the most authority on EOS systems, so we're going to put that at the bottom of the pile. We're actually going to give the higher authority websites that data. So for us, it's like, okay, so you want to write about, well, I'll just talk Sure Oak specifically. So we want to talk about SaaS as a market that we want to capture more organic search in. So everything's about SaaS, or let's get even more granular. Let's get fintech, and let's go particularly into their problems. And then our blogs have gotten less frequent, but longer. Table of contents, human author pages, citing, all of that's happening. So we really focus on new niche content, things that AI can't call derivative. That's what's appearing in the AI overviews, in our opinion, and I think it's proving out. We're having decent results. Just mic drop. Just no one. Just everyone.
We're all perfect. Amazed.
Just,
no, I think this is awesome.
Wow, what great!
Congratulations.
Good job with neat. That was so clever of you adding an N. So
no, I think it's fascinating. I love that you're on top of it. I'm totally ignorant these days. I don't know, Weaver, Michael, what you guys think?
Yeah, I mean, I think like I've heard it called like GEO or GSEO, and just like generative engine optimization. And yeah, I think the main takeaway I've seen, which one is no one knows exactly how to optimize for it.
Yeah.
But I think the kind of resounding thing that backs what Nick just said, but kind of like the resounding principle that everyone's saying is just one, answering questions more directly is helpful, and then two, just like general SEO best practices, less on the technical side and more on like are you creating content that's relevant to your audience? Are you speaking about it in a way that's easy to understand, that's skimmable, that people can like quickly get information, and that is somewhat unique. And so I think all of the kind of like hacky SEO things, like adding different kinds of backend meta tags or other things that you could do, or creating like programmatic pages at scale that are basically all saying the same thing slightly differently. Like all of those kind of things, I think, are becoming less effective, especially for GEO. So yeah, I think that's my main takeaway that I've seen, and I found that to be true for most of our clients. That we kind of dabble a little bit in SEO. It's definitely not our forte, like Nick and the team, but on the sites that we're just being relevant, being informative, and trying to answer questions directly, that's what's like actually working. And I think that's a good thing for SEO, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think it's spot on, Weaver. The other interesting, just the media consumption cycle right now is just so bizarre. I mean, influencers are dominating, views, right? And so it used to be just a TikTok influencer. You used to be just an Instagram influencer. These people are now putting their stuff on all the platforms, and they're reaping tons of benefit, and they don't even represent hardly any of the actual, spend that they're getting. I thought it was interesting. I think it was last month, the CMO of Unilever, I think he's somewhat new, but he's all in on sponsoring influencers. Unilever, this is like big CPG brand. I mean, going from, branding their soaps and individually to influencers using their products and being sponsored. I mean, this is very, I don't know if you've ever read the book by Ryan Holiday, Trust Me, I'm Lying, but like
Yeah.
the ability to get influencers for a fee to say whatever you want, that's again, it's a very interesting way that we're going about the cycle. It's not necessarily AI related, but just the way AI has changed our behavior as consumers. I think we've talked about this a lot. We now use chat in addition to search, or now chat is now going into search. It's not always right, but it's an interesting convergence into these models.
Well, for online stuff, honestly, the influencer model, I think, is more closely related with traditional advertising than search marketing. I mean, the concept of search marketing, you enter in a keyword and then it gives you a result and there's an advertisement within it. The idea of listening to somebody on TV and having them endorse a product is a very old form of marketing. And now doing it through influencers, where younger generations are now consuming more of their content, through video, through people, it has a much higher trust factor than just, this initial wave of digital marketing of kind of searching for something. I mean, that's pretty far removed really from how people make decisions. So I think it's actually, I mean, I like it. And now you get into the whole, are they biased? Are they paid? How do you indicate that? But I think it's actually a much more natural way to receive information to be marketed towards.
Oh, absolutely. Weaver, I mean, you work with Killcliff. I don't know if you can talk about your experience with influencer marketing there, but you had a big influencer associated with that one.
Yeah, I think I can talk about it. But
Yeah, okay.
Joe Rogan is one of their big influencers, and yeah, I mean that kind of can like make or break the business, right? Anytime that he would talk about Killcliff, or anytime that he would mention it in passing, like sales would 10x overnight, and that kind of just that would sustain for a while. And I think I hear and see that a lot on the kind of the micro influencer stage, just getting, especially if you're a niche business. I think it's particularly interesting for those who are kind of niche businesses, because to Michael's point, I think historically, like, the Gatorades and Nikes of the world have always used influencers to push their brand and make these huge impacts. But I think now, as like these micro influencers are becoming more accessible and people can better understand, like, if I'm in the, for Killcliff again, they're in the MMA space. So they had some more micro influencers who are like MMA. Maybe there's also in the hunting space. So people who are hunters, like they have a much smaller audience. There's a lot less people trying to get in front of them. And so those are great influencers for them as well, where you might not, 10x sales overnight, but you get like a super loyal fan base by just getting someone that's relevant in the niche that you're trying to get into. So I like it a lot conceptually. And I think that kind of like rise is really cool in my opinion. I think there's pros and cons to every kind of trend like that. But overall, I think it's a good thing for advertising.
Yeah, I mean, front row seat to Joe Rogan having, I know he has equity in the company. I know that was an expensive get, but like that's amazing. And it's always blows my mind. Khloe Kardashian, who's famous for being famous, has multi-billion-dollar product brands, based on her celebrity. As marketers, that is a huge opportunity still. I mean, and if CEOs can, even if it's just niche celebrity status and influence, that is just huge, from a content point of view as well, which I think just cycles on paid, cycles on earned and paid media. Have
Right.
you seen what is the website? Epic AI. It's just tracking what's the actual investment that's going on in the space. This is, I mean, I've already said I'm a little freaked out by how fast Sam is going, but like I get it, they're going super fast. So training compute 4.6x multiplication over 1 year, and the algorithms are improving by by 1/3 every year. So 1/3 less compute via the algorithm, and like this is trillions of dollars of investment and power, and I've never seen a boon like this. I'm 50 now, right? So I lived through 2.com bubbles, and I had was fortunate enough to be a part of an energy bubble as well. I don't think they were bubbles, but they were boons. I've never seen anything like this, and there's no signs of stopping.
Well, this was the one that I was really interested in, the power consumption one. You've heard about it. It was, what was it? Facebook buying a power plant or whatever. There's a lot of those things going on where people are building their data centers near power plants. They're buying power plants. There's been a renewed rise in nuclear, small scale nuclear in order to support it. I didn't really realize how much power was being consumed until they started translating it into, typical like appliances. Like, what does it mean? It's like just doing chats is like keeping your lights on all night, things like that, where it's like we've spent 10 years trying to put more efficient light bulbs, energy efficient appliances. And then now you have a family of just using ChatGPT all day, and it's the same amount of power that stuff was. I didn't realize how much of a drain it was. And then how much that kind of power consumption curve is increasing like exponentially.
Yeah, I was listening to Nathan Lambert. I think he's a AI researcher at the Allen Institute, but he was talking. I mean, the old models were crunching one token at a time, and I don't know how many megawatts a token is, but now they've gone to Michael, you're an engineer, so I'm have to rely on you, but inference computing. So now every query can have 10,000 tokens. And they've just busted open reasoning models with just that change in engineering. But it's not sustainable from a power point of view. So I'm sure the models will get better, but like maybe you can explain what that is. I mean, I'm kind of a dummy.
I don't know that side of it, but I do know the demand. Well, it's not just the amount of power. Even if you could do that, the grid doesn't support it.
No.
Yeah. Power is like the limiting factor right now over the next 5 to 10 years. And, in China, they can just move quickly and build power plants. And in the US, it's like you got to go through so many regulations and planning over such a long time period that it takes so long to get these power plants stood up. But the analogies I hear regularly about AI and what it's most similar to is one is like when the internet first came in the 90s and we're going from nothing to the internet, and then we went to mobile. And I hear people make these comparisons, and it is a life-changing technology, right? I think it's changing how we're doing business. Nick, we were chatting for a moment about like telling my kids, like, just ask ChatGPT, and I ask it all the time. It's like such a powerful technology that we've been given, but it's crazy the amount of progress being made. And I also wonder if the efficiency in terms of power requirements will help, because you think of like the old computers from like the 50s and the 60s taking up a room and being, like things are so much more efficient now. From a hardware standpoint. I wonder if they'll create more, or maybe that's already factored in when they're making these projections, Michael. I don't know.
Well, Tom, you mentioned about the kids. I've had this conversation with my kids who are 16 and 14 a couple times. I was like, guys, if you want to know what it was like in the mid 90s when people were talking about the internet, I was like, this is what it was like. This is the type of change where it's still new. People haven't totally figured it out. There's a lot of people on the leading or bleeding edge of this that are predicting revolutionary change coming from this. A lot of investment, obviously a lot of hype. I said the only difference is it's happening faster.
Yeah, it's coming really fast, and we're living in a very interesting time in this like co-pilot space. I don't know how long it's going to last. So, go ahead, Weaver.
Yeah.
I know you got to jump soon.
No, yeah, I think the other just like scary aspect, other than just the increasing power consumption, is I've heard a lot about like the water consumption that is paired with that. Like in order for a lot of these different forms of electricity to run effectively, like you have to have water to cool them down and put on the power plants, and so some crazy stats around like the increase in percentage of like water being used at power plants, and even like Meta and Google have addressed that a little bit of they're promising to like put more back into the environment in the future than they've taken out, which everyone's like, how will you possibly be able to do that? So I think that's going to be one of the things that like will be hindsight 2020 of like, oh, we should have thought more about what this is going to do to all of our natural resources. So I think that
Weaver, there's what's weird about that is how very quietly nuclear energy has become clean energy, because a lot of the people who were formerly very environmentalist, right, were very anti-nuclear. And there's a whole other story there about like kind of why that, but those same people are often the same kind of tech entrepreneurs, and they very quietly were like, well, look, can we just tuck nuclear back into the good guys?
Yeah.
And it's like, well, it's going to be clean, and now it's clean nuclear, which I think most people who understand energy generation understood that nuclear was actually kind of clean, and the nuclear waste part of it is not actually that big of a deal compared to coal or even some of the byproducts of wind or solar or batteries of all things. But so I think it's just kind of like people just kind of flipped it, where it's like, oh yeah, no, That's clean tech now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right? It's like,
Yeah, even
Yeah,
like
and
these next generation, like these smaller modular nuclear plants that are coming out. It'll take 10 years for this to come online, but that's where we're going. And they use less water, the rods, the waste, the nuclear waste in the rods and the cooling that's required is way more minimal. I mean, France has been doing this for years, and like,
forever.
they don't have any access to fossil fuels, but yet they're completely energy, stable. So anyway, but Weaver, you got to run. Anything with closing thoughts?
no, I mean, this is a great conversation. Definitely super fun to just chat about the future. So appreciate you
Yeah,
guys having
man.
me on.
So yeah, appreciate you, brother. So wait, Michael, Tom, before you leave though, have you guys seen what Google's coming out with their glasses or the Beam
I saw it
technology?
on did anybody watch Lex Friedman this week?
Oh, I was about to pull that up. Hold on,
Yeah,
let me
he had
show.
Sergey on it, and they did the beam thing, and I think I understood what was going on from the way he described it, but this seems like one of the things where it's very difficult to understand unless you're experiencing it. But this type of technology, this is how you guys know how they shot Mandalorian?
No.
The volume is what they call it. Google it if you want, but essentially what they're doing is the screen is doing eye sensing. So what it's doing is it's actually shifting the perspective on the screen based on eye tracking kind of where you are. So it's giving it depth perception where normally a 2D screen is a 2D flat screen. And if you move this way, the TV's flat or whatever. But what it's doing is in the background, it's moving, like I call it the parallax, call it whatever, so that it's actually looking like somebody's there. And I can't, it would be probably, it's hard to probably understand unless you're looking at it, but it essentially makes it look like you're looking through a window and the person's actually there. It's very cool.
Yeah, that
Yeah,
clip I just showed of Lex, and like it doesn't give it justice because it's
Right.
3D and the guy's
Yep.
handing him an apple. He almost could touch it. Again, back to Minority Report and interacting with these UIs, and we could show the new Google glasses that are for Android that are coming out. That's a game changer. Go ahead, Tom.
Yeah, no, it reminds me of like VR at a distance, right? Because it has to know where you are and where you're looking, and then it's changing what's there. So rather than that being up on your eyes, it's several feet back. But I remember Google showing a prototype of Beam like a few years ago, and I'd never heard of it again until now. But it seems like one of those things you have to experience it. So we could talk about it and see a video of someone else using it, but until you're sitting there in front of the thing, it's like you don't really know what the experience is like.
It's you can have a crystal clear high resolution image,
Right.
and if you're watching it on a 2D screen, it still is a 2D screen. It's the angles and it's the depth that those things are sensing on the side of that screen. It's trying to look at like how you're looking at something, and then it's adjusting the image behind it so that it really appears exactly what it would look like if that person was standing right in front of you. And it's not VR in the sense that it's virtual, because that's an actual image. It's just creating a presence of that person being in the same room with you, even if they're in a screen thousands of miles away.
Yeah, exactly.
God, I mean, if you're a marketer, your head has to explode of the opportunities of being able to interact that tactically with a customer.
Well, yeah, from a marketing standpoint, the use case that Lex was talking about was where he goes with a lot of stuff, but for geopolitics is if you were talking to a world leader and you it would literally feel like you're right there. And I think there'd be something about, the empathy, the emotion of being in the same room with somebody that could replicate, in a very powerful way. It's really, really interesting.
Yeah, the other one were the blanking on the name, the XR glasses. Now Google, I mean, Sergey was very, admittedly said he messed up with glass, but this next iteration, maybe they were just early with the hardware, and now is now coming up with the technology again. This is a screenshot of or an example of, as I'm wearing the glasses, it can translate for me real time. It can give me a tour, or actually give me my text messages as I'm walking through Venice here. Like all kinds of cool things. Again, this is that Minority Report serving up ads directly just for me, depending on where I'm at by geo. That's pretty cool. I love where Google's head's at with some of this tech.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's very similar to what Meta's been doing also with
Yeah,
their
that's right.
glasses as well.
The Ray-Ban
And the
deal.
challenge, the challenge has been just the weight of the hardware and trying to put that into your glasses, So then they've been using your phone as basically the processing and have it, connected to your phone. But it's a super interesting future, because I think about all the time to have to like dig into my pocket, pull out my phone. I wonder if in 15 years that'll just be like this antiquated way where you're just seeing it in front of your face.
Well, they tried to do it the Johnny Ive thing with
That's right.
OpenAI. That's a weird one too, because can you really replace the phone? Hard to do. Glasses, for all the reasons that you just described. It's heavy. It's also kind of weird because people know it's on. I heard a good one though. I was talking to somebody here down at ATDC this week, and they had a great idea. It was, could you do it with the earpods or AirPods? That's a great place to embed AI in a way that's it's audio. That makes sense. It's not obtrusive like glasses where it's a little too weird, cameras, things like that. And then the idea of what OpenAI is doing is some type of a pin or some type of another device. You can't introduce a new device. You got a phone, you have AirPods, and then maybe glasses. But if you try to introduce a fourth thing, I don't think it's going to work.
Yeah, we're already cyborg enough with our phone on our body.
Yeah.
But you brought up voice, which is definitely got to be the next horizon, the immediate one. And I've been very impressed with Gemini's Pro version, where I'm able to stop it mid conversation and redirect it. I think that's a huge improvement. It used to be like you had to wait through this, thesis. Once I answer your question, like, no, that's not what I wanted. I actually wanted a more simple informational search. I'm very impressed the way these things are becoming more conversational. I don't know if you guys have had the same experience or play with some of the other tools, but like, I think, everyone's down on Google on some of these things. Gemini's a really good product, a really, really good product. I know ChatGPT is way ahead, but each of them seem to jump each other.
The chat
that's
and
good too.
ChatGPT is great.
I use Gemini a lot, and they've been a little bit behind, but I mean, they have the smartest and brightest people, and they've had DeepMind going for a while. The voice stuff, it's interesting because Alexa's been out for a while, Google Voice, all those things, and Siri, right? And I think it's just getting progressively better and better. It's faster, so there's lower latency. You can get more towards the answer you want more immediately. It feels a lot more like intuitive and like you're just getting what you want. Whereas like Alexa from 5 or 6 years ago, you're just, that can be frustrating.
I still don't talk to Alexa. She's dumb as a brick.
So dumb.
So dumb. But I think they don't release it for safety concerns. I know they can put it in there.
Well, I thought that Alexa started using Claude because Amazon's an investor in with them. I don't know.
Haven't seen any difference in my dumb advice.
Okay.
So.
Real dumb.
Yeah, no, I think it's an interesting, listening to, this was another funny thing. I don't know if you guys ever do this, but Sergey was like, I don't talk to the AI in public. It feels a little too weird. I don't know if you guys are like, I see people talking to it on the treadmill every now and then in the gym. I may be guilty of that, but like, I'd rather close the door and have my private conversations with my robot therapist. So.
Yeah. I think it's a weird social thing where, remember when people would walk around with like one Bluetooth earpiece and that you'd be like, is this guy crazy? Is he just talking to himself? Yeah. And now that's more normal. I feel weird when I'm trying to do speech to text dictation. So I have to like type out a whole text message and then someone else is in the room nearby. I'm like trying to talk quietly. Like,
It's amazing what's normal at the gym now. The influencers, filming themselves on the squat racks.
Well, I wish voice to text would dramatically improve. To me, it still is. You love it. It's great. The amount of typos and then the inability to correct it is, I don't know why they haven't figured that out yet.
Yeah, that's a good point, Michael. Well, that is an hour. We crushed it. I thought that was, as usual, interesting, terrifying, all at the same time. Also fun. Love hanging out with you guys. So any closing thoughts? So, Tom, what's the name of your new agency?
Tamarind.
Tamarind, check him out. That's awesome. So if you need help with paid LinkedIn ads, he would be a great resource. What are you up to these days, Michael?
Getting back involved at ATDC a little bit, volunteering down there and helping out. And Atlanta Tech Week is next week. There's a lot of great AI sessions next week down in Midtown.
That's awesome. For people new to the cast, ATDC is the Tech Incubator by Georgia Tech University. Has been an amazing part of our tech ecosystem here in Atlanta. So, gents, thank you so much. We'll see you on the interwebs later. All right.
Nice.
Take care.